Hello, brilliant educator. Lovely to have you back for more Embodied Educator podcast, present and practice. Today with Body Whisperer Corinne Castelli. And before we explore our voices as gateway to learning and teaching, I have something special to announce. And it's been a little quiet on the podcast channel, but not behind the scenes. With so much excitement, I am inviting you to the Embodied Educator Summit series. And I've interviewed 25 embodied pioneers about how to break through curriculum stress, master the art of attunement, and steward true change your learners yearn for. So hit the pause button on this cool interview with Corinne, which is a super starter into the jam-packed summit series that I've created especially for you educators. Like an embodiment one-on-one starter kit to dive into the power of embodiment for yourself and your learning space. Go to www.embodimentforeducators.com. No numbers, all written down. Fill in your name, email address, put the 28th of April in your calendar for the Embodied Educator broadcast. Then come right back to us as Corinne is going to blow your mind and body in this embodied talk on taking off our masks and showing up authentically through our visual presence and language. So pause, register, www.embodimentforeducators.com. Come right back, and I hope you have so much insights in this wonderful conversation you don't want to miss. Welcome, Corinne. So lovely to get to talk to you. And I am very curious, where are you tuning in from? Because I know this place has a little spirit of where you're based now.
Yeah, so nice to be here with you and with the listeners today. I'm tuning in from Switzerland. I'm in Bern, so in a natural environment. It's quite beautiful today, a little bit cloudy. I'm looking out the window,
Yeah.
and yeah, I'm kind of a little bit in my meditation room.
Yeah. Your Tibetan room, I think you mentioned. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, some
Wonderful.
Tibetan tankas around
Yeah.
here. Yeah,
Sending good vibes. Nice.
yeah.
Well, lovely. So let me introduce you a little bit more to the audience so they know your successes of the past, and then get to tune in with us in the present to learn about all things voice related and embodiment. Yeah. So Corinne Castelli, a body whisperer who breathes, moves, and lives play and curiosity. The multitudinous of her embodied work is rooted in many lineages, and it's beautiful to see how she brings it all together through the voice as a gateway to process, presence, prosody, and performance, and many elements more. Corinne has a diploma in acting and several years of professional stage experience in Italy. She is also a somatic therapist and somatic experiencing practitioner specialized on the topic of the voice as a doorway to regulate the nervous system and the voice as a doorway to integrate developmental trauma. She also holds a BA in early childhood education. And as the founder of Vocal Somatic Regulation, Corinne offers a unique polyvagal informed voice approach that helps people to feel more safe and connected through the process of freeing their unique voice. Based in Switzerland, she works in a private practice with clients both online and in person. She also teaches therapists and somatic practitioners who want to deepen their understanding of vocal development and nervous system regulation. And I got to experience not just her immense knowledge around the body as our vocal instrument and the intricate larynx and nervous system. I also got to meet with her, and I saw a wild and lively presence, and she's such a thorough, curious, and gracious educator who awakens, I will say, everyone to attune to a kaleidoscope of their senses. And I hope through this conversation also a little bit. And it's such a feast to talk to you, Corinne. So let's explore more rhythm, regulation, and maybe a little rebel of our inner voice.
Yeah.
Welcome here in the Embodied Educator community.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to invite you and to talk to you. Yeah. So, the first question on the podcast, which I always ask, is which teacher inspired you or left behind an imprint that you can still tune into? That was like a really profound moment, learning, big lesson, small lesson. Yeah, who
Mm.
got that to be in your journey?
Yeah, that's a great question to start with. And I mean, I really have learned with many
I
teachers
know.
and many kind of also pioneer
Yeah.
figures in somatics. And the first that comes in my mind is Gisela Romert. She is not well known internationally, but she is the founder of the Lichtenberger voice work for applied voice physiology. And I learned many years with her, and she has done an incredible body of work in research around the physiology of voice, the physiology of listening and hearing. So
Mm.
she has drawn from many different lineages. And yeah, she has been sort of, I love these pioneering figures of people who are explorers and then maybe don't get too famous, but she is the one who has kind of given the ground for a lot of then important figures in the field of functional voice work who developed through her input. So she's a kind of ground person and figure. And then, of course, I studied with Peter Levine, with Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen, with Susan Harper from the Continuum work. And what I really have kind of let sink into my myself is their curiosity, the curiosity of inquiry, their openness into staying in a field of not knowing and being also
Mm.
kind of fine with the space of not knowing. Because this field we are talking about somatics, about embodiment, about voice, is a field that requires this humble attitude of learning. And here we kind of get the transfer to the embodied learning community you are serving. So it's so much about also the topic, how do we learn? What do we need to be able to learn properly, to digest information, process information, and transform it and create new things?
Yeah. Oh, that is already so rich what you're saying. The first thing where you really got me is like the the curiosity of learning. And that's what I mentioned in the introduction. I you breathe that too, and I feel that. And especially also in this embodiment field, that is when you're in a regulated place, what becomes available, which makes
Mhm.
brings this aliveness online. And then what also struck me, like, which is so important to pull out, I think, also for the classroom, is the place of not knowing, which is so important. And I love that as a starting point also for the conversation of to put out there for the educators. How is it for them? Are they okay with sometimes not knowing?
Mm. Yeah, this is a fundamental point because if we look a little bit, now I'm generalizing a little bit, but it's also the truth to look at the environment of learning.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
very often related to, okay, what is right, what is wrong, what
Yeah.
someone knows already the
Yeah.
answer and someone doesn't know it. And to be in that space of not knowing requires to have a sort of very strong inner stability to bear, to be able to be in that place where you don't know how things will unfold and how people will react to what you send and how you will be able to. It's like playing the ball. How will you play with this material?
Yeah.
And this requires a lot of inner safety, a lot of also self-confidence, a lot of also kind of a sort of knowing that I'm basically good no
Mm,
matter what happens.
mm,
So kind of to be able to be in that place of not knowing requires also a little bit a view at least
yeah.
of basic goodness,
Oh, yes. I like
isn't
that.
it?
Yes.
I mean, I'm taking this word of the basic goodness like from my Buddhist teachers, but it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
if this is the kind of the ground we are exploring, if this prerequisite that everyone who is in this field of learning is basically good,
Yeah.
then if we make mistakes and whatever doesn't matter,
Yes.
isn't it?
That is landing so well. I'm getting these, my cheeks here like, yes, what a different approach. Also for every student, children or older, to lean into a place like that as a starting point. Wow, where you can just feel like, oh, I can lean back a little, or lean in a little and just dare and
Mhm.
move in this plane of listening, participating, like you say, digesting, processing. Yeah, yeah. And this basic goodness. Yeah.
And especially really for the educators themselves, because very often we as educators have a high standards of what we want to bring in the world, and then there are
Yeah.
curriculums and things that we need to do and things that are kind of given.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of pressure also around the performance and what kind of goals have to be reached in a certain time. So there is this pressure of needing to kind of deal with all this,
Yeah.
and sometimes this creates a constriction.
Hmm.
And when there is this constriction, then it's difficult to enter that space of openness where we become explorative
Yeah.
and open and really being able to receive what is needed here, what is needed in the here and the now for both educators as well as students.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe that also leads into our question here, where we're saying, of course, we're going to talk about the voice and speaking, but you already, guided me. That starts with listening, and we're talking here about receiving and listening, like being present. So, can you help us in our way of embodied listening before we even talk about the voice?
Yeah, yeah. So I just give you a moment of thinking about like it all starts in the womb of the mother. And if you think about when we are kind of 18 weeks old as fetuses
Yeah.
in water, not even into an in-water environment, we start to develop our ear, our capacity to hear. So touch and hearing are the most fundamental ways of communicating and receiving information.
Mm.
So this is kind of the basis. And so very often I say, and actually, I think this is also something that Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen sometimes said, that before being able to speak, you have to be able to move and to listen.
Mm.
So here we go to into this very interesting connection between also movement, somatic information, and listening.
Yeah.
And here, at least in my own view, the classroom, the place where we teach, is a big ear.
Mm.
Big, it's like
I
it's sort
like
of
that
I
expression.
view it, isn't it? It's like a
Yeah.
big womb. It's
Yeah.
like actually it's like a big womb where information and things get kind of transmuted,
Yeah.
transformed. But this to be a safe container, it requires to kind of slow down and enter a state of precisely listening to what's going on inside of myself,
Mhm.
And what's coming from the space outside, also what's going on outside of me.
Yeah. These layers of neuroception of inner cells, in between us and outside. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because as you know, now you use the word neuroception from polyvagal theory. We know that in order to feel safe,
Yeah.
we kind of that basically we're scanning all the time for cues of safety from the environment. And the ear is one of our primary sensory perceptual organs that inform us about the environment,
Mhm.
gives us information, is it safe or not? And so basically, um, in order to feel safe, this has a lot, so that safety and the connection with hearing is very, very linked. And so that's the reason why if, let's say, my ears are closed, because this is metaphorically, but if my ears are closed, because my whole system is into a protective contraction mood, I will not be able to receive the fullness of and the richness of the information, the co-creation that can take place in a classroom, because I'm in a protective
Yeah.
kind of mood.
Yeah. I just have this image of all these children that also, and adults too, and I actually hate them. Um, the noise canceling things where we're overprotected sometimes to shut everything out because that's literally what I'm thinking about, that we're sometimes closing off because it's too much, because this place of overwhelm in the world sometimes is so present that we just literally close it down. And
Mm.
yeah, you're
Mhm.
mentioning this makes me so aware of that. Maybe also our students don't know how to process and just also habitually sometimes just shut down completely by shutting information out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
you said now the word processing information, and this is something we already had a conversation about.
yeah,
It's like that nowadays there is so much information overload, and processing information is sort of more a digestive system thing.
yeah,
And as we all know, the digestion, the organs have a completely different rhythm. They cannot go so fast. And so you see that also
that's beautifully said, by the way.
filtering information, and okay, what do we allow to enter? What do we need to have? Some things that completely kind of leaves the outside world out. You know, it's all also like a thing of modulation. How do we modulate the inner and outer world?
Yeah,
And this
yeah,
starts so much with the act of listening.
yeah, yeah. And that, I think, is a way of communicating that we're also not so much used to listen to learn, to tap into, to understand even what it's saying. I recently, a couple of years ago, noticed like my right ear starts to beep a little, and that is like my threshold. Like, well, that's not, it's past the orange, it's getting to the red. When I hear that, I feel that. But that's
Mhm.
something in the past, when I was younger, I didn't realize, and we are not taught to. So that's so beautiful to hear this embodied listening and digestion, and especially what you said, the rhythm of digesting is going slower.
Yeah. And the rhythm of listening, because when we start to really listen and allow also things to reach us, we need to become a little bit more silent.
Yeah.
So that's also one reason why it's when you have like tiger going on in your body, like you are so anxious and there is so much energy and there is so much unprocessed movement,
Yeah,
it's difficult to get silent
yeah,
inside and allow information to come.
yeah,
So here we enter into this dynamic of sending information, receiving information. What do we need to be able to process also all these energies that moves us
Yeah.
in order to be able then to be here,
To be in the present.
yes, here and the now,
Yeah.
together.
Yeah. Yeah. My brain is like thinking, okay, how do we allow that? How do we, but maybe that already gets us into a practice. I don't know. So I thought more like to talk a little bit more, but my how question is popping up already. Can you tell us more about that? Maybe our polyvagal story way in might help us there. I don't know. Do you think?
Mm-hmm. With the listening and getting more quiet. Okay,
Yeah.
just take a moment where you are, where you're sitting. You don't need to change anything. You just let yourself a moment of time to sense the surface you're sitting on and to land a bit. Again, you don't need to change anything. It's nothing so special that we're doing here right now, but now take a moment and try to remember a person and the voice that you like. A voice of someone that kind of soothes you, that has a soothing effect on you. The voice and the presence of someone, it can also be, yeah, it can be also an animal, but the voice of the animal is a little bit more difficult. So maybe it's better a human being. And just take a moment of time to listen to that memory of the voice.
Mm.
And see if there is any kind of reaction in your body.
I'm
Yeah.
smiling all the way.
Yeah. So, yeah. Do you want to say something? What
Yeah,
happened?
no problem. Yeah. So my partner is not here at the moment. We've been apart, I think over 5 weeks now, and we'll see each other in 2 weeks more time. So we send each other voice messages. And so this was a moment where I'm like, yes, oh, and I long for those voice messages because our time zones, sometimes we don't get to talk. But this is a way of, I find his yeah, his timbre and his rhythm in his voice when he's in a connective state. Love it, my nervous system, and it soothes me, but also makes me really happy. It literally made me happy, and yeah, inside and outside.
Yes. And this is just by kind of remembering it. Of course, it's the whole person, it's not just the voice. But there are many studies who have been done who show that listening to voices and specific voices have an impact on our nervous system and that we start to literally release oxytocin. So there
Mm.
have been some studies where they have put some girls into major stressful situations and
Yeah.
so they measured their cortisol level and it went, wow, very high. And straight after that experience, they were allowed to talk to their caregivers or to a person who was close. And they kind of measured that that the cortisol level dropped and
Yes.
the oxytocin kind of went up straight away just by a phone call.
Yeah. That is so impactful, the way that information reaches our body.
And this makes me really think now to make the transfer also to the education environment that our voice is a portal of soothing, of calming, of containing, of touching. So when we are in a classroom with people, we might not touch them physically, but we touch them through the vibration and through the information that we send.
Mm.
As well as we can also give a sort of containment, like a sort of boundary that we kind of set through the presence of our voice and through our own presence in the classroom.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So voice is completely relational.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah. And very often when we have like sort of we have a lot of teachers, educators, people who have to speak a lot and then they get in trouble with their voice, for example, then we have um, sometimes a too technical or mechanical way to fix it through a technique or through you have to project your voice more or, but there is no not so much awareness around the relational dynamics that happen in the classroom and that affect the system of the teacher and the voice of the teacher, the nervous system of the teacher.
Yeah. Yeah, the clutter gets into our bodies as much as it gets into just literally the voice with the saliva. But it's this deeper system that digests and then needs time and feels constrained. That is so true. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
That
So
is an
so
eye opener also, I think, for educators to realize. And I remember I spoke to somebody else who said, like, as educators, we're also vocal athletes, what you're mentioning here. Like, it is an element of an instrument, but it is part of a larger system.
yes, and here comes the nervous system part in. You have to take the nervous system into consideration
Yeah.
because if you get in a sympathetic response because all the class is a mess and everyone is shouting around and
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
you are yourself in that kind of arousal and your students as well, or now it's more what I'm kind of describing, maybe with younger children, but also with adults sometimes, there is a lot of activation in the room.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it's something where you have to ask yourself, is this something that now I'm gonna counteract by being more loud of them, by kind of projecting my voice more out and telling them, like now, we are gonna, or in that case, it needs a regulation where actually you kind of start to, whoa, I need to calm, I kind of to get the engine get a little bit more down.
In the body, I feel it like the womb you've been speaking about before, like literally lowering it down to the womb space and getting to the ground.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the voice will have also a chance to regulate with what's happening in your own nervous system. And then the information and the tone you will set, then it
Mm.
will be much different.
Yeah.
And then sometimes there is really then the chance to whoop, everyone suddenly is pays attention.
Yeah.
So you see, it's all a sort of kind of working with regulation and also realizing where am I, where am I on the ladder of kind of more free states or kind of a little bit frozen dorsal space, or where am I more in the kind of mobilization of sympathetic response, and when am I in a more ventral vagal socially engaged place? What do I need to be there?
Yeah. Yeah. And how can I get back there, or how can I stay there? Yeah, as much
Mhm.
as you can, because of course it's a fluid system, right? Our nervous system. It is a continuum, like you said. Yeah.
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 Yeah. And I think it's surrealistic to say, when I'm imagining all these classrooms, that it will be only green, only ventral, only chill zone. There will be triggers for sure, and they will keep on coming. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how can we grow capacity? What is a way in to grow that capacity from your embodied perspective and with the voice and listening? Because I heard you say, yeah, listening and becoming aware. How can, by presencing, we just did a little bit with that. And yeah, that capacity, that window of capacity.
it's very interesting because you did this move, you started doing this
Yeah.
movement of expanding and contracting. And
Yes.
what came in my mind also before is that we are living organism. So
Yeah.
we are not machines. And this is also a big, yeah, I mean, this is also like a big issue right now, the way we learn. We are not only linear, logical machines. We have this organic, pulsating aliveness in
Mm-hmm.
us.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to honor this. So in the classroom, of course, there will be moments where, okay, it's contracted, it's difficult, but how do we make the transitions?
Yeah.
So the transitions here, in my view, are so important because sometimes when there is no time to do proper transitions,
Yeah. Yeah.
this is the moment where there is a sort of mm, misattunement or a sort of break. And sometimes these are the moments where the chaos comes. And so it's really like to see, okay, how can we, because also here we're starting to speak also about the we, because in a classroom we are also a we organism where everyone is still a personal identity kind of.
Mm-hmm.
So so it's this thing, how to accept also that this movement will constantly take place, um, and how to stay curious again, how to stay curious. Okay, now something has closed down or something is now very challenging. What do I need as an educator to kind of, wow, re-enter the state of openness from the contraction, or what happened there?
Yeah.
And again, we enter again the field of curiosity to look. I mean, I don't know now, maybe I went a little bit astray, but
No,
yeah.
no, no. I'm catching you. I'm catching you. And I'm also thinking, because what's beautiful here is I think what you've also dialed into your body is this curiosity where this even because this chaos can feel like, and then especially with the mindset of learning machines and I need to get this in right. So already pulling that one a little bit off sometimes to allow to be and allow chaos, allow transitions is so important. And then those moments of opportunity there to see if we can state shift, because state shifting is story shifting. So
Yeah.
I'm catching you there. Yeah, 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 very much. And then just see if you can get the openness and drop the labels. That's what I felt like. And then I have to think of Wendy Arbuckle, where it's up the front and down the back. Breathe in, and then everything you don't need, labeling, judgment, down the back.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so
Mm-hmm.
that's what I'm catching from all the things you said. I also have this embodied way of processing information I learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you see, that's the reason why, in a way, it's so important that educators know themselves on this somatic level, because the more you start to get attuned to different qualities in yourself, the more you accept that there are some very strong energies, difficult to handle,
Yeah.
difficult to kind of navigate. The more you make this experience yourself, and the more you will be able to be flexible and fluid with this,
Yeah.
as well as very clear and directed and boundary setting when it's necessary.
Definitely. Yeah.
But this is something that I have learned so much from my acting training, is that the more qualities you can access in yourself, the more your system gets fluid and flexible, and the more you're able to really start to resonate because you are not afraid of a specific quality.
Yeah.
So let's see, you have some students or children in a classroom who come with a lot of aggression. And I mean, I know what I'm speaking about because it's not theoretical. I have lived this personally in my work with children.
Yeah.
If I am afraid of that charge, I like to speak in terms of charge.
Yeah.
If I'm afraid and I don't know how to deal and expand into that charge and to work with that charge, probably I will shut up. I would set a boundary, but the whole process will be kind of little bit sharp and not really attuned. And the more I'm able to hold the charge, the more I'm able to stay open also and to really see, okay, what is the need behind this aggression? What is the need behind this charge?
Yeah.
And what I'm speaking about, it seems now that we're entering another arena of talk, but this still has to do a lot with listening, with resonance, with the capacity to be attuned in resonance. And here again, we jump into the topic of voice, that working with your voice, for example, is not just about having a nice voice or developing skills.
Singing.
Yeah,
Mm.
it's about increasing the capacity to resonate, yeah, to have this to have this open, resonant body,
Yeah.
body mind. Yeah.
Yeah. That can hold that charge, like you say, and then work around it till a certain extent, maybe, of course, of how much is possible for both and everyone. Yeah, yeah. That is such a beautiful quality to have as educators and so important to grow.
Mhm.
And that is also, I think, where, because there's this super focus on being inclusive and being diverse and embracing everything. But our body doesn't embrace everything. It's been fed with a lot of information and digesting that over the time that it runs certain pathways faster than others. But all our students, all our learners think, am I safe here? Do I belong here? Am I liked here? Am I good enough here? They all do. And if
Yeah.
you say, hi, they notice the difference. So this is so beautiful what you put out here to catch ourselves in that charge, like, oh, can I stay up and also stay with the connection? Because everyone needs that, has that longing for being seen and looking past the behavior that is there. And then you address the very important thing. What's the need?
Yeah. Yeah. And also what came in my mind now, as you said this, was a little bit also if there are what I'm disconnected with, it's impossible that I will be able to honor and receive and really care for in the outside, like in brackets in the outside, right? Because if, for example, I'm disconnected also to my physicality, to my somatic body, it's gonna be quite tough if, for example, I have 20 kids who have a huge vitality that is completely still somatic rooted. How on earth am I gonna match this
How big does
energy?
your capacity need to be, right?
And I'm really saying this with a lot of compassion because I
Yes.
mean I also know myself in many situations where I felt okay, I cannot. They have so much vitality in there and they are so expressive and open,
Mm,
and this is too much for me. But here it's interesting then to see, okay, is it a moment where I need to put a boundary?
yeah.
Or is it a moment where I am meeting a perceptual cut that I have within myself? Or where I am meeting an inhibition in expression that I have within myself.
And how did you find that out for yourself?
This is this requires quite a lot of work.
Yeah, that is a journey, right?
Yeah. For example, I just make an example that is very clear. If you
Yeah.
have one student, or now I'm speaking more about children with
It's
adults, but it
okay.
can also be with, like, you have a very loud child
Mm-hmm.
who uses the voice with the full range of, of openness
Capacity.
and
And the
capacity,
whole
right?
sound box.
Yeah. There are moments where, of course, you need to set a boundary because it's too loud for the others, etc. But sometimes we get triggered because we don't dare to express so much. We have shame around this kind of openness and
Yes.
nakedness. We
Yeah.
have been shut down and shamed around our voice. So I think this is so important also for us as educators to discern. Am I putting now a boundary because this is touching my old own inhibitions?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or am I put a boundary because now the boundary is needed?
Mm-hmm. I like what you're saying. It's speaking to my skin of the moments where they actually just enjoy the loudness and the singing, and it's almost regulating for them.
Yeah,
And then me imposing a shutdown or a stop it because it's too loud, because maybe I am not regulated,
yeah.
has happened in my classroom too.
Yes, of
Very
course, we all make,
human.
yeah, yeah,
That is important. And also the level that you address here, where it's about the nakedness and the shame that's coming up in our bodies, where, of course, that runs faster, that nervous system lane inside ourselves to stop it.
yeah,
Right? To catch
yeah,
yourself there. I'm thinking now, like in the moment, oh yeah, if you could catch yourself there and just think 2 seconds, is it mine? Is it theirs? Is it allowed for who am I serving here? Yeah. Wow. That could
yeah.
be such a change and shifter of space.
And now we also even, you even mentioned, we even now mentioned shame.
Yeah.
So we have to think about also that when you show
Ooh,
yourself with your voice,
yes.
and also again as an educator, you're standing in front of a class. Yes, you have this kind of persona that you are the teacher, and so you have a sort of position and status, but still you are a human being in front of a whole bunch of other human beings, a little bit younger in age, maybe, or older, or whatever, but still. So showing up there authentically and speaking in front of them and reaching them and kind of, yeah, this is also something that requires courage
Yeah.
and again a situation that potentially triggers shame, vulnerability, and all these sorts of things. So if you try to speak to a class that doesn't listen to you, this is a very vulnerable place to be, right?
It is. It is.
You're standing in there and
Wow.
no, and
And
everyone is shouting.
it can become this downward spiral. It's not working, and then they are getting louder. It's like,
So you
yeah,
see,
yeah.
and all this what's happening also in the educator, this is also like this very interesting thing of, this is all part of the self-regulation that the educator needs to be aware of,
Hmm, hmm.
because unconsciously all this information arrives to the audience.
Yeah.
So this is again linked to the voice that only, let's say, 10% of what we send as an information
Hmm.
is like the verbal, the notions, etc. But the rest is like communicating our inner state.
Mm.
So
Mm.
we become visible. Our state of our visceral state gets visible or hearable.
Yeah, yeah, I like that concept. Yeah.
And so, yeah, so this is a very
Yeah,
vulnerable place again, right?
it actually is. Because you're giving if you put it like that, like 90% is actually of all information that that body is also receiving, partly on a subconscious level, it's the words, but then there's the whole, I don't know, intricate level on underneath that is very vulnerable if you look at it like that, and also powerful, like beautiful at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that concept that you bring in, and also the link to authenticity through our voice. And I'm curious if we can explore that a little bit more, like to grow a little bit maybe, or to explore, our just our range first of all, because you want to expand capacity, you want to know where you are as an educator. So I'm thinking, is it already maybe time to
Mhm.
explore a little bit, and maybe you want
Yes.
to have an introduction or a guidance before we.
Yeah. Maybe I will say a few words and then we go a little bit into experiential. So, um, yeah, very often there is this question, what is an authentic voice, or what does this mean? Because actually we have so many voices within us. It's not just only one voice. We have so many
Yeah. Oh,
expressions within.
yeah.
I always like to say it's expressing, we have different voices basically. So, um, the authenticity in my eyes comes when we can reconnect with the touching quality of our voice. When we kind of can reconnect to the voice also as a haptic phenomenon, as something that touches us within on the first place.
Like our
Because very,
body.
yes. And now in a minute, we are gonna try this out.
Yeah.
Because very often with the voice, we think I need to reach out with my voice
Mm,
and convey a
mm,
message.
mm.
And we lose ourselves literally.
Yeah.
So the first gesture is, how is the voice informing me?
Mm.
How is my voice touching me, grounding me, nourishing me, or whatever? And if I find this root, then I'm ready to send out without getting lost. So
Yeah.
for me, this is the authenticity,
Yeah.
that if I stay in touch with myself through the vocal information, I'm in touch with whatever is there at the moment. It doesn't need to be a specific quality or state, but then I'm reaching out, yeah, with my full authentic state. I'm not trying to modulate or to put on a mask. I'm not
Right.
putting
Yeah.
on a
Yeah. Yeah.
mask.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we tend to sometimes also lean in towards that mask, one being in front of a group, and especially when it becomes a little tension or vulnerable. Sometimes it's, easier or habit to, okay.
Mhm.
So to let that go. Yeah. And look at that authentic imprint first of the voice. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's start a moment. So you just take a moment of time. Again, it's always important to settle a moment to sense the support that you have at the moment, and maybe it's the support of the floor if you're sitting on the ground, or of your chair. And really, in terms of breathing, you don't need to change anything. There is no right or wrong right now. It's just sense your chair, the support, the floor, maybe with your feet. And then I invite you to start to a little bit try to yawn. Maybe the yawning is not now coming so spontaneous, but you can kind of allow it a little bit, making as if exactly. Oh. And always, 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 when it comes to voice, try to really let your head and your neck kind of a little bit fluid, movable. Yeah. And then you can yawn. Yeah. And then now you go with both your fingers like where your larynx is. So you just try, if you swallow one time, you will feel that something is moving in your neck, front of the neck area. And there is the place where your voice originates. And you touch very, very gently with your finger, as if your fingertips have become some very specialized vibration receivers. So now, with mouth closed, you start to hum a little bit and just notice if you can sense vibration under your fingertips. And take it really as an exploration. You're kind of diving a little bit into this world of sound and vibration. Mm. So that's the really first step, to sense and see, do you feel vibration? Yes, and you're nodding, Liz, so it seems like, yeah, there is vibration.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the vibration is bringing your attention in a very physical way within your body. So you will keep your vibration like an anchor and see, are there other places where you can, through your touch, sense the vibration? For example, you can move a little bit on your face, on your cheeks, or a little bit on the jaw area. And again, you start with some humming and you notice, do you feel vibration under your hands? Yeah, okay. Again, do you feel vibration? Did you feel a little bit of vibration?
Yeah, it does travel up more gentle. So I was like touching here, thinking, oh, the second time I could feel it a little bit more, but just the sensations are more alive here because it's stronger.
Yes.
So that was
Okay.
like, ah, interesting.
Yeah. So the vibration is basically calling you back home in the body.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now we try another time, and you can imagine a little bit as if the sound, you are still with closed mouth, but the sound doesn't go out in the direction of the space. So the sound is kind of coming towards you, as if you are drinking the sound, or The sound is some like a good nectar that is nourishing you. So go a little bit ahead, notice, do you feel some differences? You still keep a little bit your fingers on the larynx, on the voice box, or here on the jaw, and then drink a little bit this vibration sound. Okay, does something shift through that, or how is the perception? Yeah.
For me, yes, because you said like it's going inwards to myself back gift. It opened up my airways more,
Mm.
and I felt like an extension down the back, so I could have more space for it to flow inside as well as, yeah, the movement upwards to maybe create sound. So there was a wave going on here.
Yeah, and you also showed like a little bit going down, so a little bit like a sort of rooting movement.
Yes, because
Yeah.
before I was very much up here, and now this became alive, the part of my chest and my lungs and my diaphragm, like, oh, it can travel down.
Yes, so exactly. So changing a little bit the direction of the way we think sound should go, so not sending the sound outward, but rather letting kind of sink in and down,
Yeah.
like more in the body. This is already like a change of direction. And now we are gonna explore a little bit. If you close, you can close a little bit your ears.
Yeah.
So you can really kind of close here the outside, or you can literally put your fingers in the ear. And now try to see with some awa sounds, I will show it now to you. How do you perceive the inner experience of your voice from the inside? I'm gonna do one sound. Okay, something like that. You go with a awa, now you're kind of already like with more sound. And how is it inside there?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, let's do two.
Okay.
Ah. Yeah. 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 What
Yeah,
happened?
I felt my heartbeat first of all on my ears, which was interesting. So I was so connected. I was like, oh yeah, I can feel my pulsation. So that got my brain like "Choop," excited. So I'm feeling something new. And I felt a little bit of shame with making this sound, open mouth, and then the recording. So I noticed that comes up on my back spine with the back side of my spine with a little bit of uh, heat coming up, but just slightly. You know, if I'm fully in shame, it comes all the way up to the crown of my head. So it was just gently. And I was like, okay, releasing. And then it felt like it was a little bit of an echo inside my head, like the sound of my voice. I'm not used to it like this because of the closing down. Like, is this mine? Like an unfamiliarity.
Oh, thank you so much for being so honest with the experience and for sharing this, because this is an experience that many people have. Because when you start to close up a little bit the way you normally hear yourself and
Yes.
start to perceive your voice from the inside, sometimes it's a new experience.
Yeah.
And also, of course, you see immediately when you start to use your voice, a little bit of these kind of issues start to come up,
Hmm.
right? Am I opening my mouth? Will someone look at me? How does it sound?
Yeah.
Is it sounding right? Is it not? So you see how much history there is already around the voice.
Hmm.
Um, but closing a little bit allows us also to get familiar, sometimes with a little bit more of volume.
Mm.
Because when you close, you hear yourself a little bit more loud
Yeah.
than usual.
That is actually also true. Yeah. Yeah.
And a little bit kind of less regular. So you said you heard the heart. Sometimes there are other sounds that are in there that are not so clean. The voice starts not to be anymore so pure and clean. And this is great because this
Mm.
unclean material that starts to show up is fuel for vitality and aliveness.
Mm.
Okay.
Like that. The nakedness is coming up, like you said before, like the purity, which is not in the perfection.
Exactly, exactly, because we are also so suited to the fact that the sound that comes out needs to be clean, pure, right on
Mm.
the pitch, etc., etc. So
Yeah.
now we're gonna explore a little bit further with hearing. So
Okay.
if you take both hands, and put them behind your ears, and now starting with some awa sounds, and now thinking a little bit more of projecting your voice in the front. And just notice how does this feels with two awa sounds. Okay, yeah. And now turn
Ah.
your hands
So we're
and
putting them as cupping hands in front of our ears. So we're not closing off the ears, right?
no, the back is open in the
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a little bit changing the direction again.
Yeah.
So now do some other two awa sounds and try to see how do you perceive the voice right now and the space as well. Okay. Yeah. Does something happen? Do you notice some differences? Or I'm curious. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I noticed I started swallowing,
Mm-hmm.
and my shoulders came down on the second, so with the cupped hands on the front of the ear.
Mm-hmm.
So I was a little bit more, I would say my vagus nerve got a little bit relaxed. So I was like opening up a little more and starting to get like, my sound is not that bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And the lungs were, I was aware of my chest being part of this the second time.
Okay. Yeah. That's really this thing. There is no right or wrong. It's like
No?
an inquiry. an
Yeah.
inquiry in noticing difference.
Mm.
This is an aspect of noticing the differences that is very interesting also when we want to develop different qualities, that we see, okay, how does it sound when it's like this? How does it sound when it's like that? And then
Mm.
you have both directions, both qualities at your hand, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Because when you have this in front, it's like opening more the front body into
Yes.
space.
Yeah.
You are more exposed, definitely, and there is a different auditory circuit that is going on right now,
Yeah.
that is going on.
Yeah.
When you turn your hands, the orientation in space immediately changes.
Mm-hmm. I recognize
Very
that.
often there is a little bit of a slowing down,
Mm.
and you start to hear yourself better. This is
Mm.
like something that when I'm speaking like this with you, I
Mm-hmm.
cannot run. I mean, I cannot run towards you to tell you.
Ah, you can't like speed up and
I
yeah.
cannot speed up, you know. I
Yeah.
need I need to stay anchored in my own
Yeah.
body.
Yeah.
I listen to what I say, and what I say has an echo in my own body.
Yeah. Yeah. And then when you change it to or that is very true. Or I experienced that too, where I cupped my hands in front of my ears, my back body became more alive. And then when you put them just behind your ears, so you're focused with the cupped hands forwards, it's like my elbows, everything is reaching. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you try, yeah, I really kind of, for the listeners, if you want to try it out, try to speak a little bit like this sometimes and
Yeah.
see, do you notice some changes? How is that landing? And what happens when you turn?
Yeah.
How do you perceive your voice then? It's really explorations.
Yeah. And it probably will change over days and will be different, maybe depending on, well, your own rhythm where you're in.
Yeah.
I would expect, but that's an assumption I'm making here. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure that in front of a classroom, for example, when things are getting kind of difficult and
Mm-hmm.
heated,
Mm-hmm.
to have a moment, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm leaning back into my own body, on my back body that gives me support.
Yes.
I slow down, I
Mm-hmm.
calm, I
Mm-hmm.
center,
Yeah.
because it's not so much about calming down. I center,
Yeah. Yeah.
and from there, I reach out again.
Yes.
Of course, you're not gonna do that in the
Hi, give me
classroom,
a moment.
but I think that children would love it. You know, they
Yeah.
like all sort of strange experiments.
To explore where is the sound coming from? How do I sound? How do I sound different? Yes.
Yeah.
But it does something to my presence because, like you say, the awareness of the back body, and it's a beautiful tool you just gave to realize if you practice it for yourself, then maybe you can access it in the moment where you might need it with a little bit more thought and choice to become aware of the fact, oh yeah, how can I access like the grounding backline support and then reach out from there where you're anchored, like you said, that was beautiful, where you're anchored in your own boundaries and values so you can say, okay, yes to this, no to that.
Mhm.
That is
Yeah.
a wonderful, wonderful takeaway. Yeah, yeah. It's, yeah, so powerful.
Mm.
And we're actually so used to sending our voice out into the classroom. I like the depth that you brought with this, where we realize and think maybe also a little bit more precise on what it is that we really want to convey, to use our voice for, and choose our messages, maybe even with a little pause or a silent moment that
Yeah.
you mentioned before in our conversation. That's
Mm.
I, I've never, in didactics, when also been learning about school and teaching, and then of course you use your voice and you're maybe taught to speak up a little bit or get the attention, but the way we actually bring ourselves into the room and make ourselves heard, wow, this is such
Yes.
a deeper understanding I have now. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank
This
you.
is beautiful. Yeah. 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 I'd love you to see if the circle is round, if we've spoken, touched upon all the elements of the voice we wanted to bring into the classroom, into the room, the learning space.
Hmm. I feel actually we have covered a lot of we have jumped a little bit around, which I also like to jump a little bit around.
Sounds
Yeah,
like me too.
yeah, the last thing that just comes into my mind is how is that now we are still in an era where also due to artificial intelligence, for example, voices start to come out more and more through machines. Communication is going at the speed of machines,
Yeah.
and the kind of tone of machines. And so I feel that using one's own voice as a portal to keep alive, free, movable, embodied, and human is really also a radical act to
Mm.
counteract a tendency that is sometimes really taking a little bit the human needs of regulation out of the discourse,
Yeah.
because we see it more and more that when we speak, voices are getting very very high and very quick.
Pitch.
We have very quick communication and here and that, and so, and like sometimes also very monotone, like very like machine like, and so it's like really this thing, but our nervous system is reacting to all this,
Mm-hmm.
and we
Mm-hmm.
have to be really aware that our sonic imprint has a deep impact, and we can really help our fellow other human beings to regulate through sound, through the
Mm.
prosody, through the musicality of our unique voice, because everyone is a complete different vocal instrument.
Yeah.
And I think it's just this that I really want to say, that the importance of voice for regulation and co regulation, in my eyes, is still not so much on the forefront as it could be. And especially when we are working with children and people who are still very sensitive to this information,
Mm-hmm.
we need to be conscious and aware about what's going on there. So, yeah, this I think is the last thing that I wanted to mention today.
And it also, I think, summarizes the whole process that we've been through, which is starting with embodied listening. If our students are taught to listen and then find their boundaries, because what you're addressing here is a lot of also neurodiversity and overwhelm and overload that is happening in our classrooms because they're not very sonic friendly. They don't sound even comfortable, nowhere near nice where you feel like the sound is warm. No, so we can bring that as teachers, as educators,
Yeah.
and through regulation and this authentic voice, and then to model them, like, and then they can respond with their own curiosity and openness.
Mm.
Yeah, that is so beautiful and also interesting what you mentioned, the AI, where the voice sounds like either monotone or yeah, not, it doesn't have the vibrant of the human. Like I'm bringing my fingertips together now. Yeah, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the touching quality, the
That's yeah.
vibratory warm quality of true resonance and
Yes.
attunement is
Yeah.
missing there.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, if we can become more aware of that, fantastic.
It is. It is. And then I think we get to appreciate our humanness next to the fact what AI can bring, but it has its limits and our bodies. All a certain authenticity there. Yeah. Oh, that is great. That is so wonderful. Thank you. That is a body opener, a voice opener.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for guiding us through these treasure chests all over our bodies. Yeah, it
Mm.
was amazing.
Yeah, these are really little perceptual attunements, and it's always important to see what feels also good for you. I haven't mentioned this at the beginning. Always, if something is not really kind of comfortable, then to drop it.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
really, these little kind of attunements, if practiced, can change a lot.
Mm,
And this shows us again that sometimes little drops can be even more potent than big cathartic movements if really kind of taken a little bit like day by day on little
yeah,
drops.
yeah.
Yeah.
That is very true. So let's advise little drops for our educators, a little touch, little resonance. So, Corinne, if people are interested in your work and you want to dive into something with you, where can they find you?
They can find me on my website, which is corinnecastelli.com. I have also an Instagram profile and Facebook, all that kind of stuff. Um, yeah,
Under
and
your name?
my name is Corinne Castelli, like
Yeah.
yeah, vocal somatic regulation is the work that I do.
Yeah.
And I really like to hear from people in different languages as well. So, yes,
And those
reach out.
languages are, English and
German, Italian, French. So, yeah.
the whole bunch. Wonderful, wonderful. All right. I'm gonna let you go, and I'm wishing you a very lovely day. Thank you so much for opening up a little bit more of our resonant power, and for the educators at home or wherever you are tuning in. I hope you find a nudge, a drop there, and drop us a message or anything, a voice, a sound, a note, if you'd like to share how it resonates with you and your learning space. Bye bye for now. Thanks for being with us and being part of the Embodied Educator community. I hope you found some nourishment in this conversation. If you enjoyed this episode, you can subscribe to the Embodied Educator channel in YouTube, Spotify, or iTunes. Do you know a colleague or friend who might love this conversation? Please forward the episode and ripple together with us. You can also pay it forward by leaving a review in Spotify or iTunes. Feedback means the world to us, and I love to connect with as many movement makers, soul shakers, and truth tellers in education. Let's awaken, deepen, and enrich our learning spaces with more moments of nourishment. And let's connect soul, soma, and science.